Up drop in that index, that's something for sure. But let's also understand what are the factors in play. Let's connect with the experts. Preeyam Tolia is joining us, Senior Research Analyst for the FMCG sector at Axis Securities. And to get an Economist perspective, Mitali Nikore is with us. She is the founder at Nikore Associates. Great to have you both. Mitali, to you first, this decline that we are witnessing in the FMCG sector, in your reading of the Indian economy, tell us what you see are the factors at play. Is this about the fall in consumption that we've been talking about? Has it been compounded by inflation?
Hi, Vikram. Always good to be, on ET Now. Thank you so much for having me. So, of course, when we've been tracking these different sectors, we can clearly see that, of course, we talked about the K-shaped recovery, but I think what we are clearly seeing is that there is much more of a focus on investment and investment of two types. The first one being private sector investment, which has been more subdued than was expected. And this investment was supposed to start off a consumption kind of cycle, a multiplier effect, which didn't really, which has not really proceeded at the pace that was expected. I'm not saying that investment hasn't come in. It has, and it has been thanks to schemes like the production linked incentive scheme, but the amount of pass through and multiplier impacts that were expected didn't come through. The second area of investment has been government led investment. And what we've been seeing in the last 3 to 4 years, post COVID, a lot of social protection support, a lot of government support for, the consumption needs of the very, very poor has, of course, started reducing now as we are coming out of the COVID period. And even that, that transition is starting to play out. So that's what I think you're seeing. But I do believe that in the next 3 to 4 quarters, post the election, we will start to see more of an investment boom. And that will, and especially government led investment will also increase with the new budget. And in the next 2 to 3 quarters, you'll start to see these consumption numbers revive.
The kind of capex, when it comes to the FMCG sector, let me understand from a market perspective from Preeyam Tolia as well. How closely are these FMCG stocks reflecting what's actually happening fundamentally in the economy? And some pointers over there from Mitali, Preeyam. If so, if there is this reflection, how long do you reckon this pain that we are seeing in the FMCG sector is going to last?
So yeah, thank you for having me on the show. So firstly, on the pain, how long it is going to last, right? So nobody knows the real answer. So what we anticipate from the ground check suggests is that still 1 or 2 quarter is likely to be in the pain because the rural recovery, which was earlier anticipated that it will recover, is not up to the mark. Though there are certain pockets in the economy where we are seeing a gradual recovery, but full impact of the benefits from what it is anticipated from the government side in terms of the infrastructure development and the inflation, overall inflation is coming down, right? So that impact would only be what we expect would be from a second half of FY25.
So it's going to take that long. Meanwhile, in case the Rabi season, Mitali, turns out to be favorable this year, do you think this mismatch that we see between urban and rural consumption, do you think that could be bridged?
I mean, I think Vikram, it will still be a little bit slow because, what we're seeing right now is signs of distress, which is easing. I would say 3 or 4 quarters ago, you and I were actually speaking about this, and we were talking about extreme rural distress, and we were talking about, decisions and trade-offs being made even on the margins of basic consumption, right? Now we have already spent 3 or 4 quarters seeing that, yes, there is a, subdued sort of growth, there is a subdued impact. It's not as fast as what we expect, but we are seeing certain green shoots. And also, I want to point out, Vikram, that this is not going to be uniform across the country. There are certain parts of the country, say, for example, a rural belt outside of a major tier one city. or a rural belt outside of a major tier 2 city. Those will be the first ones to recover. And then we'll start to see those green shoots, spread out. So I do think that with the acceleration in the Bharatmala Yojana, with the acceleration in PM Gati Shakti, we'll start to see those, impacts also start to make an impact in the next, like maybe 2 or 3 quarters. So I really feel that the green shoots are there, and it's a matter of accelerating some of the social protection schemes once more, which would probably happen soon after 2 or 3 quarters.
Right. So we are talking about demand side concerns, and perhaps there is an easing that can be expected. You're seeing the distress is coming down, especially when you talk about rural demand. But Preeyam Tolia, before we end this discussion, tell us about how companies are managing prices with rising raw material costs. It always remains a big ask for companies, and there have been efforts to manage it by tinkering with grammage and the like. Are these sustainable, and do you think it's going to help in managing their volumes?
Sure. So let's say that the raw material prices, what we are seeing in a recent, say, last week or onwards, there's this volatility in the raw material prices, right? So what we expect is that, so if the raw material prices continue to sustain at this higher level, then definitely company will opt for, price hikes or grammage reductions, right? So which will impact the overall volume growth, right? So as of now, it is too early to say how it is going to pan out in terms of the raw material prices. So it's basically a recent times, and what we expect is that let's see the stability in the raw material prices. Then only company will able to go for the price hikes.
In the FMCG sector is for real. How long it's going to take to come out of the woods remains an ask. But there is an easing within the economy that Mitali is pointing towards, and we hope that it happens sooner rather than later. We will see the factors at play as well. The election, of course, is going to have its own role to play. We're talking about the entire rural demand catching up with urban demand, and that is a big ask as well. The inflation story, the consumption demand, and the RBI is pointing towards fluctuating food prices as well as a reason. Can we expect these interest rates to have a bigger role to play if they stay put? How does that affect demand as well in times to come? We'll see how all of these factors play out. But thanks so much for lending perspective on the subject for the moment, Mitali and Preeyam Tolia. It's a pleasure having you on India Tonight. Meanwhile,